The door burst open. Daniel, a single dad working as a janitor, stepped inside with his cleaning cart. "Peek again, and you're fired." The female CEO's voice cracked, desperate, as she quickly turned away. In the rooftop lounge, mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her eyes were red and swollen. Daniel froze, witnessing a moment of vulnerability no one else had ever seen. The air grew thick with tension. Only the sound of wind whistling through the glass remained. She trembled, then snapped, "Don't look anymore." He smiled softly and replied, "I'm blind." One gentle sentence, light as a breeze, but it shook her entire world. Daniel Miller was 36 years old, tall and sturdy, with short brown hair and bright, honest eyes. He worked as a janitor to support his young daughter Emma after his wife passed away. Their apartment was cramped but warm. Emma's drawings covered the walls, and smiley face stickers were plastered everywhere she could reach. Daniel was hardworking and quiet. The office workers often looked down on him because he was just a janitor. They saw his uniform and immediately dismissed him as invisible. He always kept an old wool blanket wrapped around the handle of his cleaning cart. It was a memento from his wife, like a habit that helped him feel he still carried a piece of his family with him. That night, he accidentally walked into the rooftop lounge where Cassandra had collapsed. She was the CEO, only 26 years old, running a major corporation. Her elegant white suit was wrinkled and disheveled. Her mascara had smeared, and her eyes blazed red from crying. When she coldly shouted, "Don't look anymore," Daniel answered, "I'm blind." It was a kind lie, meant to preserve what little dignity she had left in that moment. Cassandra was stunned. She never expected an ordinary janitor to say something like that. Daniel didn't ask questions. He simply cleaned the glass windows, creating a safe distance so she could compose herself. Before leaving, he placed a cup of hot ginger tea on the table without saying a word. Cassandra watched his silhouette disappear. Something strange stirred in her heart. For the first time in years, she felt protected by someone's silence. Daniel returned home late that night. He sat beside Emma, who was fast asleep, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing, a trace of authenticity. He remembered his wife's words before she died. "If you can, be someone that others can breathe peacefully around, even if just for a moment." The next morning, Daniel woke up before dawn as always. He made Emma breakfast, helped her get ready for school, and walked her to the bus stop. The other parents barely acknowledged him, but Emma's bright smile made everything worth it. At work, he moved through the gleaming corporate hallways like a ghost. Executives in expensive suits rushed past him without a glance. He was part of the building's infrastructure, as invisible as the air conditioning or the elevator music. But something had changed after last night. As he pushed his cart through the marble corridors, he found himself thinking about the broken woman he'd encountered on the rooftop. Cassandra spent the entire day in back-to-back meetings, her professional mask firmly in place. But every few minutes, her mind drifted to the janitor's simple words. "I'm blind." Not literally, of course, but he had chosen not to see her at her most vulnerable moment. In a world where everyone wanted something from her, where every interaction was calculated and strategic, his gesture felt revolutionary. During her lunch break, she found herself walking toward the rooftop lounge. She told herself it was just to get some air, but deep down, she hoped to see him again. The space was empty except for cleaning supplies and the lingering scent of ginger tea. That evening, Daniel picked up Emma from after-school care. She chattered excitedly about her day, her small hand warm in his. As they walked home through the bustling city streets, he realized how much his daughter's innocence protected him from the world's harshness. "Daddy," Emma said, skipping beside him, "why do you always smell like lemons and soap?" "Because I help keep places clean, sweetheart. It's important work. I think it's the best job ever. You make everything better." If only the rest of the world could see through a child's eyes, Daniel thought. The next morning, Cassandra walked into the company pantry. She found Daniel had already left a cup of ginger tea waiting for her. She hesitated, then asked softly, "Are you really unable to see?" Daniel smiled gently. "It's just my way of saying, I won't look into your private moments." Cassandra sat down. For the first time, she allowed herself to breathe in a space where no one would judge her. In the following days, she often came to the pantry late at night, when Daniel was usually working his shift, just to drink tea. One evening, they sat at the same table. Cassandra opened up about how her family was forcing her to accept an arranged marriage for the corporation's benefit. Daniel told her about his wife, about Emma, and how he had to become both father and mother to his daughter. Between their conversations, they often fell into comfortable silence. The only sound was the gentle clinking of spoons stirring in their cups. The next morning, Emma burst into the pantry with a bright smile. She gave Cassandra a smiley face sticker to put on her cup. Cassandra laughed for the first time in months. She felt like she was being seen as a human being, not just a CEO. Emma innocently said, "Miss Cass looks like a teacup with a smiley face." Cassandra felt something warm bloom in her chest. The pure honesty of a child cut through all her defenses. Another evening, she left a package of lavender tea on the shelf as a thank you gift for Daniel. They began sharing simple meals together, hot soup, soft bread, and everyday conversations that felt more nourishing than any business dinner she'd ever attended. These moments became a sanctuary. In the sterile corporate environment, their corner of the pantry felt like a secret garden. Cassandra found herself looking forward to these encounters more than board meetings or profit reports. "Tell me about your wife," she said one evening, cradling her warm cup. Daniel's eyes grew distant but gentle. "Sarah had this way of making everyone feel important. She could talk to the mailman for 20 minutes and make his whole week better. She used to say that kindness was the only currency that multiplied when you spent it." "She sounds wonderful." She was, and she'd love Emma's new friend. He smiled at Cassandra. "She always believed that people come into our lives exactly when we need them most." Cassandra felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't think I've been anyone's friend in years. Just their boss, their competitor, their obligation." "That's their loss," Daniel said simply. "You're more than your title." One evening, Emma drew a picture of the three of them having tea together. She colored Cassandra's hair golden like sunshine and gave everyone enormous smiles. "This is us being a family," Emma announced proudly. The word hit Cassandra like a physical blow. Family. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt like she belonged somewhere, belonged to someone who wasn't trying to use her position or wealth. "Emma," she said carefully, "what makes a family?" "People who like being together. People who share food and help each other feel better when they're sad. People who hug you even when you're grumpy." It was such a simple definition, but it made Cassandra's throat tight with emotion. Daniel watched his daughter's easy acceptance of this new person in their lives. Emma had an intuitive understanding of people that amazed him. She saw past Cassandra's expensive clothes and intimidating reputation, straight to the lonely woman underneath. "She's right, you know," he told Cassandra later. "Family isn't about blood or law. It's about choice. Choosing to show up, choosing to stay, choosing to care." That night, Cassandra lay in her enormous penthouse bed, surrounded by luxury but feeling utterly empty. The Egyptian cotton sheets and designer furniture meant nothing compared to the warmth of that small pantry table. She thought about Emma's drawing, now carefully tucked in her briefcase. For the first time in years, someone had included her in their vision of happiness. Not because of what she could provide or what connections she had, but simply because they enjoyed her company. A trace of authenticity. Cassandra remembered a voice message her mother had left before she died. "You don't need to be strong for show, darling. You just need to be honest enough to breathe." The next morning, she found a small potted plant on her office windowsill. A note in Emma's careful handwriting read, "For when you need something alive to take care of." Cassandra touched the tiny green leaves and realized she'd been holding her breath for years. Maybe it was time to remember how to exhale. In the pantry that evening, Daniel noticed the change in her posture. She sat straighter but somehow softer, like someone who was finally allowing herself to take up space in the world. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me. Really seeing me. Not the CEO or the heiress or the business asset. Just me." Daniel nodded. "Everyone deserves to be seen for who they really are." I'd forgotten who that was until now. The board meeting felt like a tribunal. Richard Blair, Cassandra's father and the company's chairman, pushed the marriage contract across the mahogany table with the force of an ultimatum. "Sign this alliance with Thorn Capital, or watch everything your grandfather built crumble to dust." His voice struck like a hammer. Everyone around the table sat in tense silence, waiting for her to nod in submission. Cassandra remained still, her hands trembling beneath the table. She felt like prey backed into a corner by a pack of wolves in expensive suits. Daniel was cleaning the hallway outside the conference room. Through the glass doors, he could see the rigid body language, hear the sharp tones of voices raised in barely controlled anger. When Richard stepped out, Daniel didn't move aside. Instead, he said quietly, "When people are afraid, they need choices, not commands." Richard laughed with cold disdain. "A janitor wants to teach me about management?" Cassandra emerged from the room, her eyes red-rimmed, her face stripped of its usual polished composure. Her voice cut through the air with newfound steel. "I'm not signing the marriage contract. I choose myself." Richard's face turned purple with rage. He pulled out an engagement ring box, slamming it on the nearby table. "You'll wear this ring and announce the engagement tonight." "This is not a request." Cassandra picked up the box with steady hands and placed it back in front of him. "Keep it, father." "I'm done playing this role." The hallway exploded into silence. Only the sound of a water drop from a leak in the ceiling hitting the marble floor punctuated the moment. When Richard stormed away, Cassandra collapsed into a chair. Tears streamed down her face, but for the first time they felt like tears of relief rather than despair. "If I don't have the company, who am I?" she whispered. Daniel sat beside her on the floor, not caring about his uniform getting dirty. He repeated his wife's words. "Don't make anyone live just because they're afraid. Let them live because they want to." Cassandra picked up the marriage contract with both hands. The sound of tearing paper filled the corridor like thunder. Page after page, she ripped apart the document that would have sold her soul for corporate profits. That night, she sent a letter requesting a 3-month leave of absence. She also announced the creation of an independent educational fund using her personal inheritance. The news hit the business world like an earthquake. Headlines screamed about the corporate heiress rebellion and the billion-dollar breakdown. But in the small pantry where Daniel was making tea, none of that noise could penetrate. "Are you scared?" he asked as she sat across from him, looking smaller without her power suits and boardroom armor. "Terrified," she admitted. "I've never been just Cassandra before. I don't know who that person is. Then we'll figure it out together. You, me, and Emma. That's what families do." The word family no longer felt foreign on her tongue. It felt like coming home. 3 days later, Richard arrived at her penthouse with security guards and lawyers. He found boxes packed and a woman he barely recognized. Gone was the obedient daughter who'd spent her life trying to earn his approval. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," he said, his voice carrying decades of disappointment. "No, father. I'm making the first real choice of my life." Cassandra's voice was calm but unshakable. "I spent 26 years being who you needed me to be. Now I'm going to discover who I actually am. Without the company, you're nothing. No one will respect you. No one will want you." Cassandra looked at a photo Emma had drawn, showing the three of them planting flowers together. "Some people already do. People who've never seen my stock portfolio or cared about my last name." Richard's lawyers shuffled their papers, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding before them. "If you walk away from this marriage alliance, Thorn Capital will destroy us. Everything your grandfather built will be gone." "Then maybe it was never as strong as we pretended it was." Cassandra sealed the last box with tape. "Maybe building something new from honest foundations is better than propping up something rotten with arranged marriages." "You're being naive. The business world doesn't work on fairy tale principles." "Maybe not. But my life is going to." That evening, Daniel found her sitting in the company lobby, surrounded by boxes and looking lost. "Second thoughts?" he asked gently. "1,000 of them, but not one regret." She looked up at him with eyes that held a spark he'd never seen before. "I keep thinking about what Emma said about families. About choosing to be together because you want to, not because you have to. Want to come home? Emma's making spaghetti. Fair warning, though, she uses approximately half a bottle of Parmesan cheese." Cassandra laughed, a real laugh that started in her belly and bubbled up like champagne. "That sounds perfect." As they loaded her boxes into Daniel's old truck, she realized she'd never ridden in anything without a driver before. The worn fabric seats and the radio playing classic rock felt more luxurious than any limousine. "Are you sure you want this chaos in your life?" she asked as they drove through the city lights. "Cassandra," Daniel said, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "Emma and I have been a family of two for a long time, but maybe we've been saving a spot at our table without knowing it. Even if I don't know how to be normal? Even if I mess this up? Especially then, that's what love is, isn't it? Choosing someone not because they're perfect, but because they're worth it, because they make you want to be better." When they pulled up to the modest apartment building, Cassandra saw Emma's face pressed against the window, waving excitedly. For the first time in her adult life, someone was waiting for her to come home. Not because she was bringing business deals or company profits, but because they genuinely wanted her there. "Welcome to your new life," Daniel said, helping her carry boxes up the stairs. "Thank you for helping me choose it." The foundation's office was tiny, a few second-hand desks, a whiteboard covered in marker stains, and some donated computers that had seen better days. Cassandra rolled up her sleeves and dusted the furniture herself. For the first time, she felt genuine joy while cleaning her own workspace. Daniel and Emma arrived carrying 3 small pots of soil. "Housewarming gift," Emma announced. "Sunflowers." On the sunny balcony of the office, the 3 of them planted seeds together. Cassandra's hands got dirty with soil, and she found herself smiling at the unfamiliar sensation. Daniel said, "Plant them deep enough so the wind can't blow them away, but shallow enough so the light can call them up." Emma clapped her hands. "Just like people, right, Miss Cass?" The innocent observation made Cassandra's throat tighten with emotion. That evening, Daniel took her hand and said quietly, "I'm falling in love with who you're becoming." Cassandra looked down, whispering, "I'm still scared." Daniel's voice was patient and warm. "If you're not ready, we can wait. Emma and I will be here." The smiley face stickers now appeared regularly on all 3 of their teacups during their evening conversations. Emma's drawings decorated the foundation office walls. In the corner of one, she'd written in careful letters, "Let the sun shine in here." The foundation sent its first computer to a rural school. They received photos back showing children's bright, excited faces gathered around the screen. Cassandra wrote thank you letters by hand. Her fingers only smelled like ink and paper now, not contract negotiations and corporate stress. Their small family space filled with laughter, mixed with the comforting aroma of ginger tea. 3 weeks into her new life, Cassandra woke up in Daniel's spare bedroom to the sound of Emma giggling in the kitchen. Sunlight streamed through simple cotton curtains, and she could hear Daniel humming while making coffee. She'd slept 8 hours straight for the first time in years. In the kitchen, Emma was carefully arranging smiley face stickers on 3 lunch bags. "For good luck today," she explained seriously. "What makes them lucky?" Cassandra asked, accepting her sticker-covered lunch. "Because someone who loves you put them there," Emma replied with the matter-of-fact wisdom of a 6-year-old. Cassandra had to excuse herself to the bathroom to wipe away unexpected tears. In her old life, she'd had personal assistants, private chefs, and a team of people managing every detail of her existence. But none of them had ever put a sticker on her lunch bag because they loved her. At the foundation office, she threw herself into work with a passion she'd never felt in the corporate world. Each computer they sent out, each scholarship they funded, each child they helped felt meaningful in a way that quarterly profit reports never had. Her assistant from the corporation called, "Miss Blair, your father wants to know if you're ready to come home. The Thorn deal is still on the table." "Tell him I am home," Cassandra replied, looking around the modest office with its donated furniture and Emma's artwork on the walls. That afternoon, she and Daniel took Emma to the park. Watching her daughter play on the swings, Daniel said, "Sarah would have loved this. Love seeing you bloom like this." "Do you think she would have approved?" "Of me?" "She always said the best people are the ones brave enough to start over, to choose growth over comfort." They sat on a bench, watching Emma make friends with other children with the fearless ease of childhood. Cassandra marveled at how naturally the little girl included everyone, just as she'd included her. "I got a call from the New York Times today," Cassandra mentioned. "They want to do a story about my corporate exodus." "What did you tell them?" "That I didn't leave anything behind. I just finally found something worth running toward. That evening, as they planted more seeds in the office garden, Emma asked, "Miss Cass, are you happy now?" Cassandra considered the question seriously. Her bank account was smaller, her apartment was tiny, and her father wasn't speaking to her. But every morning she woke up excited about the day ahead. "You know what, Emma? I think I am. Good. Happy people grow better flowers." Daniel squeezed her hand as they watched Emma water the tiny green shoots beginning to emerge from the soil. 6 weeks later, their first school sent a video. 23 children had written and performed a song thanking the foundation. They held up signs with pictures of what they wanted to be when they grew up. Doctors, teachers, astronauts, artists. Cassandra cried watching it, but these were different tears than the ones she'd shed in corporate bathrooms. These were tears of purpose, of connection, of feeling useful in the world. "We're making a difference," she whispered. "We always were," Daniel replied. "Now we're just doing it together." That night, Emma crawled into bed between them for movie night, a tradition they'd started without meaning to. As the credits rolled, Emma fell asleep with her head on Cassandra's shoulder. Daniel carefully moved his daughter to her own bed, then returned to find Cassandra still awake, staring at the ceiling with a peaceful expression. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "I was just thinking about roots," she said, "how I spent so long trying to grow in soil that was wrong for me. But maybe that's okay, because it led me here. To this crummy apartment with creaky floors and neighbors who play music too loud? To home," she corrected softly. "It led me home." One morning, sunlight poured through the curtains. The kettle whistled cheerfully and the smell of fresh baking filled the kitchen. Emma placed her newest drawing on the refrigerator, 3 people standing under a row of sunflowers, with the words, "My family is growing," written in rainbow letters. Cassandra traced the word family with her finger. Tears fell silently down her cheeks, not dramatic or theatrical, just honest and real. "If you two still need me, I want to stay, not because I'm afraid, but because I want to." Daniel set down his teacup, the gentle clink against the table the only sound for a moment. "Welcome home." All 3 of them watered the plants together, a small daily ritual that had become as essential as breathing in their household. Cassandra returned to the glass tower one last time, carrying a package of flower tea wrapped in a piece of the old wool blanket. The news played footage of Richard Blair announcing new corporate partnerships. Cassandra didn't turn it off, just let the sound wash over her like distant rain. "You're still my father. I'm just not playing that role anymore." The words felt like releasing a breath she'd held for decades. In the late afternoon, the sunflowers on their balcony turned their faces toward the light. The kitchen smelled like Emma's favorite cookies baking in the oven. The wool blanket now hung on a chair in the living room, bathed in golden light. It no longer represented loss, but the continuity of love through generations. Emma's drawing stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet, with a new line added in her careful handwriting. "So no one who comes home late feels cold." Daniel touched the edge of the blanket, and memories of his wife drifted through his mind like falling leaves. Peaceful, natural, no longer painful. Cassandra watched both of them and knew she'd found where she belonged. 6 months later, their foundation had sent computers to 47 schools. The wall of thank you letters from children covered an entire side of their office. Each morning, Cassandra read a few of them with her coffee, reminding herself why she'd chosen this path. Emma started first grade and proudly told her class that her family had grown bigger with love. Her teacher noted that the little girl seemed exceptionally secure and happy. Daniel quit his night janitor job and began working part-time for the foundation, managing their equipment donations. He found he had a natural talent for refurbishing old computers and making them work like new. Cassandra's relationship with her father remained strained, but she'd stopped waiting for his approval. Instead, she sent him updates about the foundation's work, hoping that someday he might understand her choice. One evening, as they sat on their balcony watching the sunflowers sway in the breeze, Emma fell asleep in Cassandra's lap. Daniel covered his daughter with the wool blanket, creating a perfect moment of contentment. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked quietly. "The power, the money, the recognition?" Cassandra considered the question honestly. "Sometimes I miss feeling important in that way. But then Emma hugs me just because she wants to. or I see a kid's face light up when they get their first computer, and I remember what actually matters. Which is being loved for who you are, not what you can provide. Making a difference that you can see and touch. Having people to come home to who are genuinely happy you're there. The sunflowers rustled in the evening breeze, their faces still turned toward the last rays of sunlight. Sarah would have loved you, you know, Daniel said suddenly. I think I would have loved her too. She raised an incredible daughter and loved an amazing man. She had good taste. They sat in comfortable silence as the city lights began to twinkle below them. Emma stirred in Cassandra's arms but didn't wake up. Thank you, Cassandra whispered. For what? For showing me that home isn't a place you're born into. It's a place you choose and keep choosing every single day. Final message. Family isn't where you're born, but where you choose to belong and choose again every single day. If you believe in stories that touch the heart like this one, leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe to Hidden Heart Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten. Real people are creating and telling stories, not mass-produced AI.